Good morning, everyone. So this is your English Maritime course in our week 72, day 2. So again, this is your instructor, Elaine. And for this topic, this is requested by the Gumyang Shipping Seafarers. So this is all about also the continuations of our topic regarding the vocabulary in the engine room. So this PowerPoint, it's regarding the maritime safety procedures or regulations and other personal training aimed at the preventing accidents and ensuring that the well-being of the seafarers and the protection of the marine environment. So first we have here what we call the MARPOL or the International Convention for the Prevention of the Pollution from Ships. Okay. So this is a key international treaty that administered by the International Maritime Organization or the IMO. So this MARPOL aims to prevent and minimize the pollution in the marine environment from ships, both from operations and accidental causes. So the purpose of these MARPOLs is to minimize and eliminate the pollution of the seas from the ships, covering the wide range of pollutants. And as well, the MARPOL also addresses the various types of pollution. So it divides in different categories. So for example, I have here regarding the oil. So the MARPOL Annex 1, it deals with the prevention of the oil pollution of the from the sea. So regarding the oil, it's the Annex 1. So noxious liquid substances. So this one, it belongs to Annex 2. So this time, it focused on controlling the pollution from bulk carriage of the noxious liquid substances. Harmful substances or the Annex 3. So this time it regulates the prevention of pollution by harmful substance carried in pack form. Another one is regarding the sewage. So this time it belongs to Annex 4. So it addresses the prevention of pollution by sewage from the ship. So we have here again the Annex 1. It's about the oil. Annex 2, it's about the bulk carriage of the noxious liquid substances. Annex 3 is the harmful substances. And Annex 4 is the sewage. Next that we have is also the Annex 5. It's regarding the garbage. So this time it covers the prevention of pollution by garbage from the sea. Another one is the Annex 6. So this time it focuses on the prevention of air pollution from ships, including regulations on emissions of nitrogen oxides and sulfur oxides. So, in total, we have six types or six category from Annex 1 to Annex 6. So, again, the MARPOL, it relies on flag states. to enforce its regulations, but port states also play a role in the ensuring compliances. MARPOL is a dynamic conventions with amendments and updates made through the Marine Environments Protection Committee or the MEPC of the IMO. So this time, the MARPOL also is a very important instrument in protecting the marine environment and ensuring a sustainable shipping practices. So next that we have here is what we call the SOLAS or the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. So this time the purpose of the SOLAS is to aim to standardize safety measures across different countries, making the shipping safer and more reliable. So the SOLAS, it also addresses the wide range of the safety aspects, including the construction. So the structural integrity of the ship, stability, and safety measures. Another one is the life-saving appliances or other equipments like the radio communications, navigation equipment, and fire safety systems. Operations also is covered by the SOLAS because it tackles about the safe navigation practices, emergency procedures, and crew training. So the SOLAS has been updated and amended over time, most notably in 1974 SOLAS, which is the current version to incorporate the new technologies, addresses lessons learned from the maritime incidents. So in many nations, parties to the SOLAS conventions with the 1974 version, it encompasses a large portion of the world's merchant fleet. So, so it considered the cornerstone of the maritime safety, alongside with other conventions like the MARPOL and STCW. We also have here the ISM code. So this time, it's the International Safety Management Code. So this time, the ISM, it's about the mandatory international standard for the safe operation of the ships and pollution preventions. So, meaning that this is to provide a framework for the companies to manage a safety and environmental risk associated with the ship operations. So the code focus on establishing a safety management system that includes also the procedures, the instruction, and guidelines for the safe ship operations and pollution preventions. So the purpose of this ISM code is to ensure the safety of the life at sea or the SOLAS and prevent the human injury or loss of life. So the scope of this is to apply to passengers ship and other ship of 500 gross tonnage and upward engaged on the international voyage. So the companies are responsible for implementing and maintaining a safety management system that complies with the ISM code. So I've been telling regarding this SMS or the safety management system. So this system includes the documented procedures, instructions, and guidelines for safe shift operations, pollution preventions, taking into account international and flag state legislations. So I have here some key elements of an SMS. So the safety and environmental protection policy, so it has to be a clear statement of the company's commitment to safety and environmental protections. Another one is to define the level of the authority and communication. So this time, it's establishing the clear lines of communications between the ship and the shore personnel. So the procedure for reporting accidents and nonconformities. So the mechanisms for reporting and addressing incidents and deviations from the SMS. Another one is the procedures for preparing for and responding to emergency situations. So these should be have plans and procedures for handling the various emergencies. This also includes some procedures for the internal audits and management reviews. So the regular assessment from the SMS to ensure its effectiveness. So the ISM code has several key objectives. First, to enhancing the safety at the sea. Second is preventing the pollution. Another one is the fostering a safety cultural. Next is to standardizing the safety management, improving the competence of personnel, enhancing the emergencies preparedness, promoting the continuous movement, and lastly is to facilitating the flag state control. So another one here that we have is the permit to work. So this is the authorization for a specific task. So this is the formal documented system that authorizes and control the hazardous work activities on ships and offshore installation. So this is just to ensure that the such tasks are carried out safely by identifying the risks, implementing controls, and verifying the personnel competency. So the key aspect of this maritime permit to work system. First is the formalize the safety framework. So meaning that the PTW system, they have provide a structure approach to managing the hazardous work, ensuring that the all necessary precautions are taken before the work begins. Another one is the risk management. So, meaning that it is involved by identifying the potential hazards associated with the task, assessing the associated risk, and establishing the appropriate control measures. And we have also to remember that the system ensures that the only competent personnel are authorized to perform the work and that all involved individuals are aware of the risk and safety procedures. So it tackles also about the documentation or the PTW system. They relies on the written documentation to authorize the specific task. So it dealings the hazard controls, measures, and responsibilities. So we have here a different types of permits. So the common types of work permits in the maritime industry, it includes the hot work permits, cold work permits, confined space permits, chemical work permits, and the height work permit. So we're going to tackle also these different types of permit. So first, we have here what we call the hot work permit. So the hot work permits, this is the formal documentation that ensures the safety routines and proper management of the dangerous task, particularly those involving heat, sparks, or flames. So these permits are the key parts of the ship's safety management system and ensures that all the necessary precautions are taken before and during the operations just to prevent the fires, explosion, and other hazards. So the purpose of this hot work permits is to aim to the standardized safety procedures and documentations for the potential hazardous tasks. So this cover all the activities that generate. So again, I hot work permits. So this is the formal documentation that ensures the safety routines and proper management of the dangerous task, particularly those involving heat, sparks, or flames. So the purpose of this work hard permits is to aim the standardized and safety procedures and documentations potentially hazardous tasks. So this hot work permits, again, this is the permits are key parts of the ship's safety management system because they ensure that all necessary precautions are taken before and during the operation to prevent the fires, explosions, and other hazards. So these permits, they cover the activities that generate heat or sparks, such as the welding, cutting, grinding, heating, and work that could create a fire hazard. So this hot work permit typically includes details about the specific work being performed, the location, the date and time, the precaution taken, the equipment used, and the names of the individuals involved. So another work permits that we have here is what we call the confined space permits. So this is very important for ensuring the safety of the workers entering potentially hazardous areas on the vessels. So these permits that often referred to the enclosed space entry permits are documented procedures that authorize and regulate the personal entry and operations in confined space. So the purpose of this confined space permits aim to systematically evaluate the space, identifying the potential hazards, and establish the appropriate safety measures before entry. So the confined space on the ships are areas not designed for continuous occupancy but large enough for workers to enter and perform tasks. So I have here the list of examples like the cargo holds. So this is the large compartments used to store cargo. I'm also have here the tanks. So where the fuel, water, or the ballast tanks. Another example is the void space. So this is the areas between the compartments or decks often used for access or storage. Another one is what we call the cofferdams. So this is the space separating compartments, sometimes used for repairs. We also have here what we call the double bottom tanks. So these tanks, located below the main deck, often used for ballast. So why are the confined space permits necessary? So first, because of the hazardous atmospheres. So we also include or we also have um, thing to consider regarding the oxygen deficiency, flammable, or toxic gases and vapors that can accumulate. Another one is in engulfment, meaning that the workers could be trapped or submerged by liquid or granular materials. Another one is the entrapment. So, if there is a limited entry and exit points and covering the walls can trap individuals. There's also other hazards like noise, heat stress, and limited visibility can also be a problematic. So I have here some key elements of the confined space entry permit. First is the location and description of the space, nature and limitation of the work, details of the work team and tools, potential hazards and precautions, required personal protective equipment, permit validity period, and lastly, the signatures of the personnel involved in the entry. So we have here another one is what we call the chemical work permit. So this one, it's about the managing the hazardous tasks involving the chemicals. So this permit ensures that the safety of the formalizing procedures, identifying the potential hazards, and controlling the risk associated with the chemical handling, storage, and use. So what are these chemical work permit? So first is to formalizing the hazardous task. So the chemical work permits, this is formalize the procedures for handling chemicals, and making sure that the all steps are clearly defined and followed to minimize the risk. So these permits also tackle about the hazard identification and control. So meaning that these permits require a thorough assessment of potential hazards associated with the specific chemical work, such as the flammability, toxicity, and reactivity, and outline control measures to mitigate those risks. So this is also part of the SMS. So the chemical work permits are standalone document. They are integrated into SHIP's overall SMS, which includes the procedure for all safety critical tasks. So there's also a specific to chemical hazards. So while some permits like the hot work permits, they are focused on the hazards like fire. Chemical work permits addresses the unique dangers associated with chemical substances. So this includes also tasks like transferring the chemicals, cleaning tanks, or working with the specific chemical in the engine room or cargo holds. So why are these very important? Of course, is also to preventing the accidents. So by identifying and controlling the hazards, the chemical work permits help prevent the accidents, injuries, and potential environmental damage. So this also compliance with the maritime regulations, including the ISM code, which mandates a PTW system for all the ships. So the consistent use of these chemical work permits It fosters a strong safety culture on board, encouraging all personnel to prioritize the safety of the work practices. So the PTW system, it also including the chemical work permits that often requires a specific training for personnel involved in hazardous tasks to ensure that they have the necessary knowledge and skills. So we have here some key elements of a chemical work permit. So first is the task description, meaning they should be have a clear description of the chemical work to be performed. Identification of the potential hazards associated with the chemical and the work. So this should be the hazard assessment, and also the control measures, meaning there should be a precise instruction on how to mitigate the identified hazards. So there's also a specific personnel authorized to issue and authorize this permit. So the validity also we have to take note the validity period of the permit. So procedures to verify the completion of the task and the safe state of the work area. We also have some posting at the work site. So the permit should be posted at the work site for the easily visibility and reference by all involved personnel. So we also have here the last type of permit, which we call the height work permit. So this is often called the working allow permits. So this is very important for ensuring the safety during the task performed at heights. So this permit, it ensures that the necessary safety precautions are placed and followed to prevent the accident and injuries from falling. Because this permit is typically required for a work of height of 2 meters or approximately 6 feet or greater. So I have here some key aspects for of a height work permit. First is the risk assessment. So before any work allow, a thorough risk assessment is conducted to identify the potential hazards and implement the appropriate control measures. In maritime companies, they typically have a specific procedures for issuing and managing the height work permits that often detailed in the safety management system. So the permit should be clearly defined the scope of the work, location, and also the durations of work. So we have here some safety precautions of regarding the permit. So first is the equipment. So this is to ensure that the proper use of fall arrestors, harnesses, lifelines, and other safety equipment. Next is the training. This is to ensure that the personnel are adequately trained and competent in using the equipment and following the permit procedures. So, they're also designating a supervisor to oversees the work and ensure the compliance with the work permit. They also establishing the clear communication protocol between the worksite and other relevant personnel. So it's also very important to posting the warning sign or the warning notice at the work site to alert others to the ongoing work and potential hazards. So the permit will specify the duration of the work, which may be limited to a specific time frame or until the task is completed. So the permit must be also signed by the appropriate personnel, such as the officer in charge and the worker. So all personnel involved in the work must be aware of the permit requirements and adhere to them. So for the documentation, copies of the permit should be retained by the person in charge and posted at the work site. So regarding the International Safety Management Code or the ISM code, it mandates that the ship have a safety management system that includes a permit to work system for various tasks, including the work at height. This is also the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, or the SOLAS, to provide the guidelines for maritime safety that including the measures protect life and property. So this time we will tackle about the some personnels and their roles in the engine room facilities. So first I have here the chief engineer. So this is the head of the engine department. So the chief engineer is to oversee the engine room and all machinery, ensuring that its proper functioning and maintenance to facilitate the safe voyage. Okay? So the chief engineer also manage the engine department, including the electrical and mechanical divisions, and is responsible for the training and well-being of the engine room crew. So the chief engineer, it leads and manages the engine room department, provide the guidance, training, and support to the other engine officers. They also have the technical expertise. So they process the deep understanding of marine engineering principles and responsible for the proper function of all machinery and system within the engine room. They are also oversees the maintenance, repair, and troubleshooting of all engine room equipment, ensuring its optimal performance and safety. They also ensured that the engine department operates in accordance with all relevant rules, regulations, and safety standards, including those related to environmental protections and emergency procedures. So the chief engineer also responsible for managing the engine department, budget, inventory, and resources, ensuring that the efficient and cost-effective operations. So the ISM and ISPS and IOPP compliances. The chief engineer, the chief engineer is responsible for implementing and adhering to the international safety management, the international shape and port facility security, and international convention of the prevention of pollution from the ships. So they play a very important role in the training and development of the junior engineers and other um, engine room personnel. So the chief engineer is also responsible for leading the engine department's response to any emergencies or incidents that may occur in the engine room. Next is what we call the second engineer officer, or they are the one who assist the chief engineer, supervise maintenance, and operate the machinery. So they are the one responsible for assisting the chief engineer in the safe and efficient operation for the ship's machinery, overseeing maintenance, troubleshooting issues, and supervising the engine room crew. So the second engineer oversees the daily operations and maintenance of the engine room and its machinery. They are also responsible for the engine room watchkeeping duties, ensuring that the safe and efficient operation of all equipment. So the second engineer also they supervise and participate in the maintenance and repair of the machinery as directed by the chief engineer. So the second engineer also they are involved in troubleshooting technical issues and ensuring that the all machinery is functioning efficiently. So the second engineer also required skills and qualifications. For example, will there also be technical expertise. So they should have a strong understanding of marine engineering principles and practices is very essential. They also have leadership skills. So they need to be able to be effectively supervise and lead the engine room crew. They must also be able to diagnose and resolve the technical problems that arise or that occurs. They should also knowledge of the regulations, like a thorough understanding of maritime regulations and safety procedures is very important. So next officer that we have is what we call the third engineer officer, or often the first engineering officer rank for a new entrance and responsible for the specific system and machinery. So they are responsible for maintaining and repairing for the various mechanical and electrical system, including the main engine, auxiliary engines, and other vital machinery. So the third engineer, they are should be responsible for the maintenance and repair and operation of the specific machinery as assigned by the chief engineer. They also stand watch in the engine room, monitoring and controlling the machinery. They may also involve in the maintenance and operation of the ship's safety and emergency equipment. So, as the senior watchkeeping officer, they may be designated as the senior watchkeeping officer or duty engineer according to a schedule or according to a marine opportunities website. So what are the relationship with this third engineer comparing to the other officers? So the third engineer is typically ranked above a fourth engineer and a trainee marine engineer below the second chief engineer according to a shipping news website. So the chief engineer has overall responsibility for all machinery and equipment on the ship. So the second engineer assists the chief engineer and may also oversee the third engineer's work. We also have here what we call the junior engineer or the engine cadet. So these are the entry level position for those training to becoming engineer officer. So they work under the supervision of more experienced engineers. So they are gaining practical experiences and knowledge to progress in their careers. So their duties can include assisting with the engine room's operations, monitoring equipments, and ensuring the safety regulations are followed. So here are some key points for the junior engineers. So the junior engineers, they provide the essential support to the senior engineers by assisting with the various tasks related to project development, designs, and implementations. They are also involved in identifying and troubleshooting with the technical issues, contributing to finding the solutions and improvements. The project participation, so that the junior engineers, they should participate in ongoing projects working on a specific components or tasks based on a project requirements and specifications. They also work closely with the other engineers, technicians, and sometimes contractors. So they are fostering a collaborative environment. So the junior engineer, they also involved in creating the documentation such as the drawings and reports and providing the updates and project progress. So the significant aspect of the junior engineer role is continuous learning and development. So they are gaining experience and knowledge from the senior engineers and projects that they are involved in. So the junior engineer, they also have skills and qualifications. So like for the educations, they should have a bachelor degree in engineering that is typically required. They all should have also a technical skills or proficiency in the relevant engineering software tools and methodologies is very essential or very important. So they also have a very important for identifying and addressing the technical challenges. So junior engineers need to be effectively communicate with their work and collaborate with the team members. So, and very lastly, they should have accuracy and precision are very important in engineering task. So the last one is the electrotechnical officers. So this time, this is the one specialized in the electrical and electronic system of the ships. So these officers, they are work closely with the under engineers and officer to ensure that the safe and efficient operation of the ship's electrical and electronic systems. So the ETOs, the electronic technological officer, are tasked with the upkeep and repair for all electrical and electronic equipment on board. So they are including the main and auxiliary engine room machinery, ship service system like the electrical supply, communication, and entertainment system. They also navigation and bridge equipment, electronic navigation aids, IT systems, and also the fire detection and alarm systems. So they are also the one diagnose and resolve the faults and electrical and electronic equipments. So the ETO also play a vital role in ensuring the vessel complies with safety regulations and standards related to electrical and electronic system. They also work closely with the other engineering and deck officers to addresses the technical challenges and maintain the overall operation efficiency of the ship or the operational efficiency of the ship. The ETOs may also be involved in training other crew members on the safe operations and maintenance of the electrical and electronic equipments. So the ETO role is a key position within the engine department and reports to the chief engineer. So ETO cadet training programs are available, leading to a certification as a Chief Electrotechnical Officer or the CETO. And again, the ETO positions are becoming increasingly important as ships became more technologically advanced, particularly in the areas like a diesel electric propulsion and dynamic positioning. So these are the career progression of the ETO engineer. So the IMO, they introduced the certified position of ETO to address the increasing complexity of shipboard electrical and electronic systems. So that's why the ETO training programs are available that often requiring a background in electrical, electronics, and marine engineering. The STCW are the Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping. Conventions outline the requirements for ETO certifications, ensuring that the competency in handling shipboard, electrical, and electronic systems. So, okay, that's it for today. So, again, we discuss about the safety regulations and personnel regarding the engine room operations. So again, this is your instructor Elaine. So I hope you learned something for our topic for today. Okay? So again, thank you for your listening.